We are back for episode 15. So for this week, a lot of things going on. The AI wars picking up steam. And so I think for this week, we're covering a lot of OpenAI stuff. OpenAI, there's Reddit, there's some Apple, there's Slack. Just a lot of things going in the world as AI ramps up and accelerates. And so, yeah, I think we have a couple of interesting things that caught my eye at least. And so that's what we're going to talk about this week.
AI
All things
wars.
AI.
AI just
Yes.
continues to heat up every week.
Yeah.
It does. The first thing we wanted to discuss is last week, of the day before Google I/O. OpenAI made it a point to get their announcement in first on Monday, so to hopefully overshadow Google I/O. I think that was their strategy, and so they had a live stream launch of their new GPT model, which is being branded as GPT-4 O, not 40, 4O. And the O stands for Omicron. But basically, it's a new model that's available today in ChatGPT. You can use it, and they demoed a lot of new things. And Mira, who is the CTO, she was out there giving a presentation, and she brought on a couple of engineers to demo. And I noticed that they really focused their demo more on the voice to voice capabilities versus the text-based chat capabilities. So that was really interesting because you can kind of see that they're starting to maybe shift toward the voice assistant model, similar to what we've been talking around, which is what Siri is supposed to be. And most of what they showed was using that voice. And so shifting towards voice to voice conversation, it's much faster. We saw the response times were much faster. I think the main takeaway there was the response time of the model is very similar to the response time of a human. So I think it was like 253 milliseconds, I want to say, is what the response time was. And that is more natural. Just like if I was talking to you and then that's how long it takes for you to respond. They showed a pretty cool feature where they made ChatGPT translate for people. So Mira, the CTO, she can speak in Italian, and the engineer had said, I think they're engineers. I'm saying they're engineers, but pretty sure they're engineers. The engineer had said, anytime you hear Italian, respond in English. That was pretty
Mhm.
cool. The other thing that was really cool is you can interrupt ChatGPT now. If you use ChatGPT voice today, you actually have to tap to interrupt. But now you can just start saying something, and then ChatGPT will stop and listen to what you have to say. It's more like a fluid conversation with a human. And the other thing that was really cool that they demoed was better real-time vision recognition. So processing video and images, and even in real time. They went through a pretty cool demo where he asked ChatGPT to help solve a math problem. And as he was showing the math problem, he was writing on a paper, showing the math problem to ChatGPT, asking for help. She was there to coach him along on it. And so I thought a lot of things that were in there were pretty cool to see where ChatGPT and just the future of this AI model is. One of the viral things that are blowing up on TikTok is the similarities of ChatGPT to Scarlett Johansson and the movie Her. Have you watched that movie?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Latching onto the fact that ChatGPT was a bit too flirty. She was talking, in a very flirtatious
Mhm.
way with the people,
Yeah,
and that she sounds like Scarlett Johansson from the movie
good
Her.
visit.
Now, what I heard was GPT folks said that they didn't intentionally model it after that. But then Sam Altman is quoted saying Her is one of his favorite movies. And so
Mhm.
seeing this come to life is was really cool. That whole like founder led cultural thing that we've been talking around, and how, whatever the founder
Mhm.
says, like,
Yeah.
it can happen. So yeah, that's the highlights of the OpenAI ChatGPT 4o
Yeah.
announcement.
I mean, overall, it was cool, but if I think about what's already out, it kind of feels like they were playing a little bit of catch up. And so what I mean by that is the image recognition and stuff. If you remember, Google did something similar last
Last IO.
last year. Google launched like a demo showing Gemini's recognition, and they were drawing stuff in the video, but then they also got a lot of flack because they had pieced together some different parts of it. But to me, it's still, Google has been working on that kind of aspect for a while now, and so it's just like, all right, so so OpenAI is kind of caught up to, I think, what Google calls kind of like their multimodal way
Yep.
of allowing you to not just type, you could scan something. I think Google Lens is a very good showcase of that, where you can scan something and say, oh yeah, tell me more about this, and so it processes the image. And so I feel like on this aspect, OpenAI is playing a little bit of catch up, but maybe this lends more credence to their working on a search type product, because I think in order to compete with Google, that's kind of what they're missing, right? Is not just text input. So I mean, it was good. You can kind of see the direction they're going, but again, I think everything they talked about the announcement led to everything else that I was kind of thinking of, and like the other news cycle that happened. But I mean, it was cool. Again, there's only I'm going to call it 4.0 version, so it wasn't like revolutionary like
That wasn't
everybody else.
ChatGPT 5.
But anyways, I mean, I thought it was great. I wasn't, to be honest, I wasn't like, wow, that's amazing. I was like, oh, okay, you guys are finally caught up.
I vaguely remember Google's demo on that. But it's funny you bring that up because it's the same thing with Apple and iPhone where they release things and then all
Mm-hmm.
you hear on the videos is Google phones have had that for years or
Right. Yeah.
and so it's just a fascinating thing where marketing and even hype can oftentimes overshadow other
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
But why does Google always get the short end of the stick on that stuff? And the iPhone releases something and it's like, wow, iPhone. But then all the Google
Yeah.
phone users are, we've had this for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Similarly to this OpenAI stuff, where I agree with you, it wasn't mind blowing to me. It was just really cool. But also, there's a huge segment of people who think it's probably new or revolutionary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe that's just has to do with marketing, obviously.
You know, it's an interesting thing. It's almost like sometimes being the first mover or having it first doesn't really matter. It only matters what people are paying attention to at that point in time,
Yeah.
right? And it's probably, it's not just big tech, other like different products, like cars, for example, like Teslas, they didn't do everything first.
Mhm.
Like if you think about, oh my gosh, why can't this come to mind? Like their self-driving stuff. I mean, if you look at it, there've been some companies who have, did that, be it not well, but they've kind of started. They did it first, like
Volvo had cruise control / lane assist, basically
right.
keep you in the lane.
GM, I feel like GM and like GM had some similar thing. I mean, it wasn't, not fancy, but it's like cruise control, and it like kept you at a certain distance, right? And so it's kind of existed, but then it was just the way it was packaged up, right? One, two,
Yeah.
what people were paying attention to at the time. Like sometimes it's the hot company. Oh, good example, like Airbnb. Like they introduced, what was it? Their summer release. They introduced their group trip planning thing.
I
Did
saw
you
that
did you see that? And I was like, oh yeah, Verbo had that,
6 years ago.
right? Trips. That was like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But everybody's like, wow, that's so cool. You're able to like collaborate now. I'm like, hmm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's just like hype cycle, what company's top of mind at the moment, and then people are just like, for either one, they forget, or they never really cared to pay attention to begin with, right? But anyway, so
I also think
good.
I agree with you, and I
Mhm.
also think some of it has to do with feature fidelity and feature set. Because using the FSD example, I agree. Some cars had like I mentioned Volvo because I've used Volvo's lane assist, and
Mhm.
it's pretty much the same as autopilot. stops, goes, slows down, keeps you in
Yep.
center of the lane. You can take your hands off the wheel if you want to, but
Yep.
you have to keep it there every once in a while. But FSD has many more features.
Yeah. Like you can steer and turn, and so it's just like, yeah. So
Yeah,
that's why I think some people like anchor like, oh wow, this was a revolution just because of kind of, and this is kind of how Apple does it, right? So it's never first mover, but they introduce it in such a refined way
yeah.
that it feels like, oh, this is a game changer.
If we take,
So
oh, good,
you know, no, okay,
4.0 case,
mm-hmm,
I I do think the voice and tone of the bot to be more natural. I
mm-hmm.
do think that is an example of something that's more refined, right? Because being in product, hear all this, and even in marketing,
Mm-hmm.
hear it all the time. I don't want to talk to a robot. This is too
Yeah,
robotic. This is not, and I
yeah,
think the voice and tone that they demonstrated still feels kind of robotic. Just, some
yeah,
of the things that are just cheesy or
yeah,
fake sounding. But
yeah,
I think it's a big leap compared to some of the incumbents of natural conversation. So I think that's one way that, I
yeah,
probably OpenAI is going to be getting positive karma from what they've, even though
yeah.
it's not groundbreaking. Did you
Yeah,
see?
I'll reference Google again because this was even 2 or 3 years ago, and I remember when I was watching, I forget if it was an I/O keynote, but Sundar was showing it was like a voice assistant that can call and make appointments for you. I
Oh,
forget
cool.
what it was called. This was like a couple of years ago, but it was like a big thing. People was like calling to make was it a restaurant or a hair appointment? Do you remember that? And it was like the way it was talking was it was like putting in like, yeah, I think I can do whatever X time to X time, and the person, the receptionist who was talking to me, that was like a again at the time it's like everybody's like, wow, that's awesome, but then it kind of fell off, right? And it kind of like
Yeah.
disappeared. And then so again, that's the other thing. It's just like the follow up sometimes, right? People forget that you kind of did it first, and it was actually pretty amazing at the time. And so when I compare it to what OpenAI showed, that's why I was kind of like, okay, you guys are playing catch up. But again, 2 or 3 years ago, nobody was really paying attention because it wasn't AI. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
Um,
I also think that's also a signal that perhaps it wasn't a very good product, meaning whoever did use it, under the assumption that it was broadly available, it probably wasn't good.
I don't even think they actually launched
Oh, okay.
anything. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like it's the follow up, right? And so like they did this 4.0, and then it was like, yeah, you can everybody try it out now.
Yeah,
And I think that's probably the gap is like, tech does this all the time, right? Pre-announce stuff, and then you kind of forget about it
yeah.
versus dive right in. I think that's how OpenAI kind of took off in the beginning too, right? It's like they talked about it, you could immediately go use it, and it just kind of like snowballed from there. So that's a lesson to be learned too. It's like pre-announcing gets you kind of like that immediate hype cycle, but if you don't quickly follow up with it, people are just gonna forget. And then you try to like talk about it again, but then it's like, why are you guys spinning old news? Didn't you say this like a year ago, and you're just now letting people use it?
I think follow up definitely. Where I was going with the good product is word of mouth as well. That's the whole snowball effect, right? Because
Yeah.
word of mouth is super important. And I mean, I'd even say Apple does a lot of this too. They announce things at WWC and then they look pretty cool. But I would say, of all the
Mhm.
things that they launched in a new iOS version, I probably only use 10% of that new stuff. That was
Oh
really cool was last year they launched in messages because they were focused on messages last year or messaging.
yeah.
That
Mhm.
whole, dragging, like tapping on a photo, it'll pull out, the person or the sticker
Yeah.
and you can drag
Yeah.
it to a message. That was like really cool. And I've used it a couple of times, but
Never used it.
Last year, I've used it maybe 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
It's a good product, but no word of mouth because no one else is really using it.
yeah.
So, and there's a ton of that, I think. And so with Tesla FSD, I think they benefited from word of mouth. A lot of people were using FSD and were blown away by it. With ChatGPT ChatGPT in general, like everyone started using ChatGPT and spreading by word of mouth.
Mm,
With this whole, new things coming out, let's see how well they execute it and if it spreads for word of mouth. I don't have
mm,
access to any of these things yet, even though I'm a paid subscriber to ChatGPT.
mm,
So I'm waiting for it. Just like, okay, well,
mm,
when is it going to come? And they said, like the desktop app was pretty cool. How it can just
mm.
help you as you're,
Yeah,
doing your work.
yeah.
They also announced a desktop app that sits right next to you on your computer, and as you're doing work, you can interact with it, and it can help you do your work.
I've seen a couple on Twitter talk about the Mac OS version of it. Maybe this leads into our follow up. So like a lot of this stuff to me, and like I'm curious, like from a privacy perspective, how does it all tie together?
Mm,
Interesting news around that.
yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking about it last time where for some reason I feel safer with ChatGPT in terms of privacy
Really?
versus Meta.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
And I think it's because
Maybe.
Meta knows everything about me, and I'm connected to all my friends and people in my life on Meta.
Hmm.
And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I have things that I don't want, my social network to know that I'm doing or
Yeah.
writing about or
Yeah.
saying. And
Hmm.
so the fear of that leaking out to the social network, even though they're not like things that are incriminating or anything, they're just like things that are private, right? Whereas OpenAI, I feel like I have no social connection. There's no like I didn't log in with Facebook, for example.
Yeah.
Whatever I say in there is between me and OpenAI or ChatGPT.
Yeah. Maybe.
That's my perception, at least.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I mean, I haven't tested it out because I'm almost afraid, or I don't want to. Like I'm almost afraid to test it out. I figure out like because I don't want my data to be trained. So, for instance, I think some people were like inputting information to ChatGPT, and then so other people, if you were specific and asking for specific information, like company, like the people were figuring out like, oh, is this company working on X and X type product? Because ChatGPT spit something out that it probably like picked up from somebody at a company asking it for some to do something, and so people were able to figure out like, oh, okay, there's this product this company is working on, or there's like some login or detailed information that somehow ChatGPT picked up, and then was using as part of their responses. And so I think that's to me the interesting thing is because right because it's just again you can only pull information for what it's been inputted.
Doesn't ChatGPT only trained on data up until a certain point, though? I think when I asked it last week, I asked it this question. It said it only has data up until October 2023. It's not real time.
Is that
Yeah,
true?
yeah. That was the whole big thing when it first launched. It was like a year
Oh,
behind,
I mean
and then
when it first launched.
they improved that, and now
Yeah.
it's 6 months behind.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that even though it's six whatever, it's not real time. Like eventually that data catches up, right?
Yeah,
And so whatever people have inputted, even though it's even if it's still historical data, the
yeah,
data is still there, and it will eventually catch up.
yeah.
I guess is my point, right? And so, um, anyways, I know they try to address it by having you create chats that aren't used as training data. And I know if like a corporation now, if they subscribe, that corporate data is like kind of isolated and not used to train the larger model, but maybe just for the company specific model.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a lot of things. Like somebody pointed out too, like Sam Altman, and maybe that I'll just dive into the next topic since we're already talking about privacy.
Well,
Like Sam
yeah,
Altman made a tweet about, he referenced OpenAI as a business, right? Which is a very clear indication of the direction he was going, because, right, again, when he was ousted, right, it's because OpenAI was a nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit.
Yeah, as a nonprofit, that's still its charter, but he clearly called it a business, which is very opposite. And so, yeah, the other big news is Ilya gone, right? And he was a big proponent of OpenAI taking a more cautious approach, because of AGI, right?
It's the next evolution, the next stage
Yeah, next,
of artificial
yeah,
intelligence.
it's the stage, it's the Terminator stage, basically, is how I think about it.
Artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, yeah, it's the Terminator version is what I call it. But yeah, so like Ilya, he's out, he's left. It's like, I'm done.
Well,
Or maybe he was dead.
yeah, I mean, he also was the one who helped try to X Sam Altman from the board last year.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
who knows? Could have been a I'm out, or could have been a pushed out type deal.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, but I think,
Either
to
way,
me,
there's a disagreement over that subject, though.
yeah, yeah, irrespective of it, right? To me, it is that war between, we are going to push and commercialize AI no matter what, right? And the other side was, hey guys, we should be careful in how we approach AI, because this could seriously impact and change. I mean, I think everybody agrees it will change the world. One is more of, let's make as much money as we can from it. The other side is, we should really be careful, because this could actually impact the way the world operates. Anyways, so I guess we kind of know who lost money
Yeah.
more than social. I mean, it goes back to everything, right? Like big tobacco, same thing. It's like, we all know it's not good for you, yet these businesses still operate, right? Or, fossil fuels, gas company, oil and gas. It's like, okay, we know it's terrible for the world, but they still exist. But anyways, so we'll see. I feel like AI is the same thing. It's like, improve society, destroy society. So we'll see. It's
Yeah.
very an extreme positioning there, but just to get the argument across, right? That's how I think it is. Huh? We shall see. Yeah.
No, but it is a vicious thing, like capitalism and money,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, OpenAI has latched on to something that is a big, huge money generator now,
Mhm.
and that's a positive thing for the company slash business, because that brings in more money to fund more advancement.
Mhm.
What's going to be important here is, right now the public perception, our perception of Sam Altman, is he's more of a businessman slash capitalist,
Mhm.
and perhaps the safety aspect of things is maybe second or third,
Yep.
and that's important. Like, we need to hear him come out and say it's also first class citizen, right?
Mhm.
But some of the things that he hasn't addressed it enough, I think, to us for
Yeah.
us to feel confident in that.
No. So there, it was a team that's created to kind of like monitor and evaluate. Basically, it was like, how I thought about it was, is if you thought about, like, Facebook has like an ethics team that kind of like monitor, what they're doing. It's like, does it fit in, and is it whatever. So this team, to me, was the one that was,
In charge of
in charge of developing AI in a responsible way and governing it appropriately to the impact that can have. That teams no longer
yeah.
exist. It was like Elon eliminating the supercharger team. Right?
So this, in the headline of this
We
story,
won't talk about Tesla, but that's what made, when I read it, I was like, that's what made. Oh, okay, just like Elon's like, just say supercharger team, you're gone.
of this story answers that question I was saying, is OpenAI researcher resigns, claiming safety has taken a backseat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm interested to see how Sam Altman progresses in this narrative, because I'm sure he's getting pressure, even from his board. I'm sure he's getting pressure around this as a core topic.
Mhm.
Whether or not how much he's listening right now, it seems he's not listening.
Yeah. And I do want to make it clear, just in case it wasn't, is that I think safety and responsibility around AI is a different than the privacy aspect of it,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
safe is misrepresented information or misleading information slash ethical information.
I think it's more towards the misuse
Mhm.
of AI versus like purely from the privacy perspective of, right, that's what this is all
Yeah.
built off, is like all through user data and user input. And so again, it's like, what happens if the military starts to use OpenAI, right, to manage all their systems? Or like, how do people use, OpenAI to like intervene in like the politics of a
Yeah.
country, etc. Like on a scale basis, right? How people use it in like a bad way. So for instance, it's totally feasible to, as AI develops this War 4.0, right? What if somebody created hundreds of different characters, people, threw them up in TikTok and created, it's like the potential for it to be used in a bad way is exponential.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's already happening too, right?
It's happening and it's getting better.
Yeah,
And they're contributing to making it better because,
because it's going to be more realistic. You're not going to know the
yeah,
difference.
yeah.
And I agree with you. Right now, it is hard to know the difference. I keep hearing stories about these Instagram accounts or OnlyFans accounts making
Huh?
hundreds of $1,000s and they're AI.
Yeah, right.
The other thing I've been seeing lately and bringing Google back into the picture,
Hmm.
I, I think I've said before, my routine at night when I'm washing dishes is I watch Google, like I watch YouTube,
Hmm.
stream different a
Hmm.
bunch of videos, and it's like my learning period.
Hmm.
I've been seeing this ad pretty frequently of
Hmm.
a guy talking about it's a scam basically. I know it's a scam, but he's
Hmm.
basically talking about it's a bit a crypto scam because there's a bunch of those out there. And it's this older
Okay.
guy. He's in a suit and he's talking about this is the moment now. Crypto is going
Yeah.
to explode. It's time to
Right.
what happens.
Yeah.
I can tell he's AI because he has like a monotone face
Hmm.
and you can see like stutters in his like mouth and movement.
Oh, really? Okay.
The person who's more susceptible to scams
Yeah.
probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It's like scams. This is a whole new generation and wave of phishing and scamming that's going to start
Yeah.
happening. But
Yeah.
the reason I brought Google into the picture was why isn't Google moderating that ad? It's
Hmm.
so clear that it's a scam, and I've
Yeah.
seen it at least 10 times in the last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah. I mean, like, I think Meta has the same thing. TikTok has similar things. So it's just like, yeah.
I think we're going to see actually probably new business opportunities. Bringing business back in the picture, we're going to see either new business opportunities or even just whatever nonprofit or
Yeah.
coalitions, right? That
Yeah.
try to fix and prevent this problem.
Let's let's call it the white hat AI.
What is
Adversarial AI, right? It's AI versus AI. This is
yeah, AI
like the
versus
real
AI.
AI wars, right? It's people who use AI for those purposes, and the people who build AI to counter that AI.
Exactly. I mean, that's what we do with hackers, right?
Yeah,
We counter
yeah,
hackers with other hackers. Like the
yeah.
government hires hackers to like have hacker wars or whatever for people who are trying to hack into systems.
Maybe that's the answer. It's like we're worried for the wrong reasons. It's like, yeah, if you can build AI to do the bad stuff, let's just build AI to counteract that, and then there you go, and they can fight it out, and everybody just
Totally.
kind of sits and goes about their day.
I think that will be definitely a thing, and we're gonna see that I would assume in the next year or two.
Yeah, it's just matter who builds the better version. Like the stock market, right? Like 90% of it is all algos, and so the algos just fight against each other to push the market someplace.
The
So
bots.
it's whoever has the best designed algo wins.
So it's interesting now because this Ilya, who was their chief scientist and also co-founder, to see
Mhm.
start a company that's actually going
Yeah.
to battle these, create a safety
Yeah.
net around these
Right.
AI bots coming out.
Where did he go? Who wants to sweep him up?
Yeah,
The lead researcher of OpenAI.
I think we'll probably find that out in the next 2 to 5 months. I think.
Yeah. There's only a couple places he could go. So he could either go to Minstrel,
Mhm.
Anthropic, and there's probably a third player, maybe.
The last thing about OpenAI is Reddit. We've talked about this a number of times in the podcast. Where, as just a reminder, Sam Altman is a heavy investor in Reddit before they IPO'd. He owns 8.7% of Reddit pre-IPO. So
Okay.
not a small size. That's actually pretty
No, that's
good.
not a small size at all. That's a pretty big. That's a sizable thing or sizable
Reddit
name.
stage.
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
Uh,
Interesting. Didn't know that. I don't know. I wasn't quite sure why it was news, or maybe when we talked about it a few weeks ago, maybe it wasn't confirmed yet, or maybe there's a second deal. But yeah, go ahead.
OpenAI is going to start using Reddit posts to train their data, and then once that, I guess, official announcement or second announcement came through, maybe the first announcement was pre-IPO, the second was post-IPO, and so that's why it's making more news waves. Stock closed the week 10% up
I
for that
know.
announcement. I think the day after was up as much as like 20%.
Yeah, it was a huge spike. So failed on this one. I know when we talked about it, it's like it's gonna go down. Maybe it'll be another. No,
I think the lowest I got was 42, right?
it touched 37.
Okay, so it got down
But
to those
yeah,
levels. But your call was that it's going to go below, right?
well, I mean, so I was right. It went below IPO, right? And maybe
IPO was
that's,
32.
again, none of this is financial advice, but I thought
IPO
it would
was
go a little
32.
bit lower. Hmm?
IPO price was 32.
Yeah. Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So I look at it as what it actually opened at. So I know it was sold if you got in at 32. If you got in at the IPO like before it actually hit the market, then yeah. But like I look at it when it actually opened, it opened at like $45.
Okay. So yeah, I went below
Yeah.
that price because through SoFi, I had the ability to go.
You got into it.
No, but remember I told you I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had the ability to buy Reddit at $32. That was the offering.
Hmm. Hmm.
Had my order ready, had the money in SoFi's app, but decided not to do it just because I forget why. I think it's just like I thought it would come back down.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it never actually got back. Yeah.
So yeah, that
The
would
bought on the dip. It's a pretty clear reversal. But
that would have
hindsight,
100%.
as
And
in everything. Hindsight.
yeah,
Yeah, that would have been 100%.
there
Well,
would
I mean, technically, you could have bought GameStop.
I'm not even gonna go
And
into GameStop
you could have more than 100% that. It was, yeah.
unless you bought last week. Then you're down 100%.
So crazy.
All right, continuing our AI wars. Do you want to talk about the Slack news?
Yeah, again, I think this ties more into kind of like our previous discussion around privacy. So, right, I think what caught a lot of people is that it wasn't, for some reason, people are now picking apart that it's not easy to opt out of having your data and chats and etc. Included in Slack's AI. So they're currently getting a bit of flack of like the only way you can actually opt out is you have to email Slack, and so it looks like it was built into kind of one of their existing terms and services or
Animal
privacy
module.
policies.
The
Yeah,
tactic, right? That's a tactic that we always use.
totally taxi. It's like make it as difficult as possible. It's like, yeah, we'll give you the option, but you're gonna have to sell me, send me mail, snail mail,
Yeah.
send me snail mail to do it, right?
Well, the other
This isn't
tactic is when you're signing. So when you're signing up, right, you have that
mm,
checkbox
yeah,
that's automatically checked, or you have a
yeah,
little, a little scribble underneath the sign up that says, "By doing this, you accept
yeah,
our terms and conditions." Because we
yep,
know that, like this, when you actually call out that something's happening, then that
Mhm.
pauses you to think like, oh, do I want that
Yeah.
to happen?
Yeah.
But if you make it so
Yeah.
subtle, like during a sign up or
Yeah.
login screen process,
Yeah.
then you don't really think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. But to be fair, if you don't sign it, you can't use the product or service, and then it's like,
Yeah,
as a company, it's like, well, if you don't read it, then it you actually kind of do.
exactly.
A lot of people, it's just like, oh, whatever, I want to use it, but there's another reason. It's like you actually should read it, and if you don't agree, then it's like you shouldn't use the product or
Yeah.
service, right? But it's one of those weird things. It's like you want to use it, but it's not like a negotiation, right? It's like you agree or you don't,
Mhm.
and if you don't, then we actually don't want you to sign up.
Exactly.
But anyways, so we had talked about this in I forget which episode, but a few episodes ago, right, where AI is really about the companies that succeed in this kind of like AI war are going to be the ones that have the most unique data that they're able to train their models off of, right? And so that's what every company is gunning for, that has a large user base, is like, how can we use our user base to create a model that is more unique than anybody else's model, right? So Slack has a very different user base if you think about outside of their corporate, but just like you and I, we could create a Slack group thing, and you have all these people who use Slack to communicate or to manage their nonprofits or to manage like their small working group. And so that's part of why OpenAI wants Reddit, right? Reddit is definitely a unique set of a lot of real users talking about the everyday, right? And so that would tie into kind of how they're positioning their new
Yeah.
4.0 model, right? What better than to actually take all the all the Reddit stuff, right? But anyways, so
Although there are a lot of trolls on Reddit, so that's gonna need some filtering.
or maybe you can create a different Asian model. There's actually a company.
Speaking of troll, speak to me like you're a troll.
Yeah, you laugh, but this was also in the news. It was character.ai, which is basically you can create different types of agents to have conversations with,
Yeah.
or characters. And I was like, oh, okay, this is actually super interesting. I was wondering if anybody was actually doing it, and I saw it on, I think it was like TechCrunch or something, that they were talking about it. But I was like, okay, so when I saw 4.0, I was like, this is kind of where I thought it would be going towards, is then you could create all these different type of quote characters or personas. But
Yeah,
anyways,
and you can. I don't know if you saw the other demo, but
oh, yeah.
there was another demo where a person made two ChatGPT bots talk to each other. One was a male. So
Yeah,
there are different voices and personalities you can give these
yeah,
bots. It's not just
yeah,
a flirtatious female voice. I think they
yeah,
just did that just to lighten up the presentation.
yeah. Yeah. And then the question is,
Maybe it's
why does it have to be female? Why couldn't it have been a male? Why is Cortana, Alexa,
Siri.
Siri, why do they all have to be female? Why can't they be male?
The last thing I'll say about privacy is, I mean, at the end of the day, like, and it's just for everyone, whatever you put in any digital thing is going to be available to
Mhm.
anyone online.
Yeah, at this point.
Whether a hacker gets into it, whether Google or Microsoft or Apple want to use that data for
Yeah,
to improve their products.
yeah.
So the guidance here is, if it's private to you and sensitive and confidential, don't put it into ChatGPT or any
Don't
other.
put it online.
Yeah, or
Basically.
Slack, or your corporate Slack, right? Even on the
Mm.
corporation level, there's even tools where corporations can see what you're doing, what you're typing,
Oh yeah, totally.
and
Yeah.
it's just amazing to me how much people don't really understand that or realize that.
Mhm.
And then when things like
Yeah.
this news about Slack comes out,
Hmm.
people are surprised by it. And so, yeah, privacy is important, and companies care about it. Don't put anything that you feel is super private into the internet. The last thing I'll also say, but the other thing I'll say to that is, you are one of billions of people that use these products. So, like, unless you're doing something absurd or criminally indicting,
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to single you out and be like, what is Tony looking at today?
Right.
So yeah, that's just, I don't know, just guidance in general for people
Yeah.
who don't know. All right. So last on the AI wars topic was Google's I/O recap. Google had their I/O event the day after OpenAI's announcement. Sundar and a bunch of other people got on stage and talked about the things that are being worked on Google. And for the most part, they also launched some pretty cool things. Like there are some cool demos. Just to recap, there was a focus on mobile that I saw there. And you mentioned earlier the multimodality. The way Sundar phrased it is uh, allows it to recognize any input and turn that into an output. So photos, video, text, voice, any input. One of the key demos was their new Photos app, and Sundar demoed that personally of how you can type something into the Photos apps. Like the one he did was, "What is my license plate?" And instead of just showing you all the photos of license plates, even if it's not yours, his demo showed that it actually knows what your license plate is based on other information available, as well as maybe the recurrence of the photo that you looked at. Deeper integration with Google Apps. We know this is coming in, just like Microsoft's Copilot. I mean, over this last year, you've seen AI being integrated into something like Google Docs, but sounds like deeper integration. Gemini is going to have deeper integration. Improve photo and video output, just like OpenAI Sora. Google demoed some cool things related to text to photo or text to video output. And then the last thing was relaunching search, centered around Gemini and AI. So search is soon going to be using AI more. And the way that they showed it was when you do a search, you'll first see some AI results at the top. And then that should help guide you around and hopefully return the results you're looking for in a more AI powered user experience versus the traditional like link model, but that will still be there. So yeah, Google I/O had some cool things. As we expected, everything was focused around AI. At the end of it, he did a pretty cool thing that I saw where, and I'm sure this was staged, but he asked Gemini how many times did they reference AI in the presentation.
That's right. Yeah,
and the
that was
answer
funny.
was 120. So they uploaded the transcript, and Gemini told them 120 times, and then it updated to 120.
You didn't mention Project Astra?
I did not, but that was one of the main highlights as well that made a lot of news. Do you want to talk about that?
I don't remember much about it, other than it was.
That's why.
Is that why I was like, oh, okay. Yeah,
Well, I mean,
Project Astra.
yeah.
It was. I guess it was an up. I don't want to call it an update, but like they were showing case something. I don't even say it's the next version, but again, a more demo of like an AI assistant. Again, similar to OpenAI's 4.0, where they were kind of showcasing their assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it was in response because obviously they've been working on this for a while. But anyways, back to our notion of I/O wars. So we know OpenAI is working on an AI assistant. Google is working on an AI assistant. I'm sure Microsoft will incorporate this into a Copilot assistant. All roads lead to Apple and Siri. Everybody's like, after all this, it's like nobody really talked about it. Everybody was more concerned about like, oh, is this what Siri is going to be like?
I did hear a lot of Siri references.
Right? Yeah. This is literally all roads lead to Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, and is this what Siri is? Is this the outcome of which was kind of funny if you think about it? Nobody cared about how actually the company, OpenAI or Google or Microsoft, it's just about, oh, this is what Apple is doing with Siri to make her better.
Yep. So the countdown to WWDC in, what is it, 1 month?
Yeah, and it's like in June. It's like in a couple of weeks, actually. Yeah.
We shall see.
Hype cycle continues. That's good. It gives us another week of full content to talk about.
All right. That's a good AI episode. And thanks, everyone, for continuing to listen. Give us a like, subscribe, and also listen to us on the podcast. We originally started this to be a podcast. but our YouTube is doing better. So thank you all for watching.